Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to imagine a completely agonizingly frustrating scenario. You've been waiting in this long, seemingly endless public healthcare line for a procedure you really need. We're talking months of waiting, and then, suddenly, someone just walks right past you, flashes a card, and goes straight to the front. They literally paid to skip the line. It's a scenario that plays out every single day across Europe, and today, we're going to unpack exactly what that means for all of us.
Okay, let's dive into this. Is there really anything wrong with jumping the healthcare queue if you actually have the cash to do it? I mean, it feels like a pretty straightforward question, right? But as you'll see, this is actually a massive moral and economic dilemma. It instantly hooks right into our basic sense of fairness, and honestly, it shapes the very foundation of how our entire healthcare systems function.
Section 1. Jumping the healthcare queue. The moral and economic dilemma.
So, for decades, this hasn't just been some casual dinner table debate. It's been this grand, sweeping mystery that health economists, sociologists, and researchers have desperately been trying to solve. Like, what actually happens to everyone else when a select few just buy their way to the front? The core premise of this whole investigation revolves around what we can call the private bypass. Over the last few decades, private health insurance has become incredibly common across Europe. It essentially lets people completely bypass public health services and use private doctors and facilities instead. It's literally a parallel track operating right alongside the public one.
Section 2. Two competing health theories. What really happens when you skip the line?
The stakes of figuring this out are absolutely huge. And for years, the academic and medical communities have been split right down the middle between two totally opposing viewpoints on how this private bypass actually impacts the public. So, impartially speaking, let's look at the two main theories experts have been debating. Think of them as the two suspects in our mystery here. Theory 1 argues for a sort of trickle-down benefit. It says, hey, when the wealthiest people use private health services, they're actually doing everyone else a massive favor. By leaving the public queue, they supposedly free up beds, doctors, and resources, which leaves way more capacity for the rest of us. Makes sense, right? But then there's Theory 2. This theory argues that private services actively divert crucial resources, stuff like specialized staff, time, and funding, away from the public healthcare system. And because of that, public care becomes worse for everyone left behind. Honestly, they're both completely logical theories.
Section 3. The 20-year investigation. Uncovering the truth with data.
To solve a systemic mystery of this scale, you need some serious, dedicated detectives. Enter the researchers from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. You'll often hear it called NTNU. We're talking specifically about Professor Paul Erling-Martinussen and PhD research fellow Oda Nordheim. They set out to finally figure out which of those two opposing theories actually matches reality. And the wait for answers is finally over. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that their massive, peer-reviewed investigation was just published in the journal Health Policy in March 2026. The results are officially in, and to truly appreciate just how definitive these results are, we've got to look at the sheer scale and rigor of the work they put in.
First off, this wasn't some small, isolated look at a single city or one hospital. No, they analyzed data across 20 different European countries.
And it doesn't stop there. They track these developments over an incredible span of 20 years, measuring the shifts in these countries from 2002 all the way up to 2022.
And the final piece of this massive puzzle, their dataset utilized information from over 300,000 people. I mean, wow, 20 countries, 20 years, 300,000 individuals. That is exactly the kind of monumental, comprehensive scale required to finally crack a case like this.
Section 4. The surprising verdict. The data speaks.
With hundreds of thousands of data points crunched and 2 whole decades of trends analyzed across an entire continent, the researchers found a clear, absolutely undeniable winner between our two competing health theories. I actually want to read this quote directly as expert testimony from Professor Martinussen himself. Quote, "Our findings suggest that an increase in private health insurance uptake leads to poorer health in the population over time." Well, there it is. Theory 1 is officially debunked. It turns out that when people leave the public queue, it does not magically leave more capacity or better conditions for everyone else. Theory 2 is the harsh reality here. Private healthcare draws vital resources away, and over time, the overall population's health actually drops.
So the crucial point is summarized perfectly right here. Public health deteriorates as private insurance increases. The data proves that paying for private health services might be, highly beneficial for those who can afford it, but buying your way to better health comes at the literal expense of others. It's simply not a victimless bypass.
Section 5. Who bears the cost? The unequal impact of private insurance.
If the overall public system is deteriorating because of this massive macroeconomic trend, well, we have to ask, who exactly are the victims getting left behind in that worsening public line? Let's move to 5.5 and see how this builds into a systemic issue of inequality. Lower education is strongly associated with lower income, at least on average, and that leads directly to less financial resilience. Now sure, some people might get private health insurance handed to them as a standard perk through their corporate jobs, but the figures clearly show that it's incredibly often the people with the absolute least financial resilience who are most heavily affected by the degrading public system.
To really put a human face to this data, just look at this striking finding from PhD fellow Oda Nordheim. She explains, quote, "People with a low level of education are more likely to report poor health if they live in a country where uptake of private health insurance has increased." This isn't just some abstract economic shift on a spreadsheet, guys. It disproportionately impacts our most vulnerable demographics. If you lack financial resources and your country shifts toward prioritizing private insurance, your actual physical health is statistically likely to suffer as a direct result. That's a huge takeaway.
Section 6. The bigger picture. Policy and societal well-being.
So what does a comprehensive 20-year study like this mean for society as a whole? And more importantly, what needs to happen next based on these findings? Well, we have to impartially weigh these two realities against each other. On one side of the scale, we've got the individual benefit, right? Faster access, skipped lines, premium care for those who can afford the private bypass. But on the other side, we have the undeniable societal cost, poorer overall public health and medical resources being actively diverted away from the masses. It is the ultimate clash between individual advantage and collective well-being.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate conclusion drawn by the researchers at NTNU. Professor Martin Newson states it plainly, concluding, the negative health effects on the population as a whole outweigh the benefits that private health insurance provides to individuals. So when you actually sit down and do the math on a national scale, the systemic damage done to the public system is fundamentally greater than the specific perks enjoyed by private patients. It's just an overall net loss for society's health.
Because of this overwhelming pile of evidence, the researchers end with a really clear directive for the future. Action is required. They are of the firm opinion that European policymakers must implement strategies to actively counteract the potential negative side effects of private health insurance. 20 years of data makes it literally impossible to ignore the imbalance any longer. Leaders really need to figure out how to protect public health systems from just being totally hollowed out.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought to reflect on. If buying better health costs the health of others, what price are we really paying as a society? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the systems around you, and I'll see you next time.